go. There we are. I just need to get this funny little thing away from the top. All right. We're here today to talk about whether owning a business is right for you. And let me tell you how we can help you here at the SBDC. We offer no-cost confidential counseling, of course. I am one of the counselors. We've got 21 offices around the state. We'll be talking today about starting a business, but we can also help you with working on your business plan, getting financial assistance, how to improve your marketing, all of the things that you see on the screen. And of course, including that is training workshops and webinars. Probably during the pandemic, some of you have been sitting around frustrated with life as you were living it and thought now was a good time to start a business. Others of you may have been presented with opportunities that would allow you to purchase a business or start a business, and you're ready to plunge into that despite things in the economy being a little iffy right now. Whatever the reason, we're going to walk through whether really owning your own business is a good thing for you, and if so, what are all the things you need to do. There are about 6 characteristics that identify an entrepreneur. First of all, are you a self-starter? Can you get going on your own, or do you need to be prodded to do things? Are you good at making your own decisions, particularly if you're going to be a sole proprietor and not have any employees? You're going to be stuck making all the decisions, and you need to feel comfortable with that. Are you able to assume responsibility and accept a high level of risk? Many times when you start out, you have put everything, not only your heart and soul, but your entire bank account into the business. So you need to be comfortable with that kind of risk. You need to be organized. And I have some clients that I speak with sometimes who aren't sure that they have very good organizational skills. They've always had a job where they were under the direction of someone else. But I ask them the question, have you ever organized something like the PTA talent show at school? Have you ever organized the annual golf outing for your fraternal organization? You know what it means to organize things if you've done something like that. Well, running a business is very similar. You have to have the big picture, know all the things that have to be done, know in what order they need to be done, and then see that they happen. So don't feel like you aren't organized just because you've never necessarily run a business before. I think one of the key things is, do you have the energy and the stamina to push yourself? I owned a business for 16 years along with my husband, and so that's a little bit of why I'm bringing this information to you. And his favorite line was always, you know, the best thing about being self-employed is that you only have to work half days, and you can choose whichever 12 hours you want. And the reality is that most of your days, particularly in the beginning, are going to be 12-hour days, and that's tough. Day after day after day. And not everyone has the stamina, the energy to do that sort of thing. If you don't, you might need to think about whether entrepreneurship is right for you. And the last thing is, do you have the support of family or friends? I just said you'd be working 12-hour days. How are they going to feel about it if you're not home for supper, if you miss the ball game, if you cut out of church early because you have to open the store? All of those things need to be considered before you embark on owning your own business. The first thing then that you need to talk about is, what's my business going to be and what do I know about my business? Who's going to buy the product that I intend to manufacture or that I intend to sell? Who's going to use the service that I want to provide? What do I know about those people? How many of them are there? What are their economic situations? Am I going to be marketing my products to a very high-end limited clientele? Am I going to be selling my services to a wide range of people in the general public? You need to have a good idea of who your customers are. You also need to know your competition. Who else is doing what I'm doing, and how are they doing it? and how many of them are my competitors, and where are they? They might be local, they might be elsewhere. If you're selling a product that people can buy on the internet, well, then they're online. That's who your competitors are. You'll need to think about what's the current demand for your product or your service. How many people want what it is that you are making, what it is that you want to sell, the service that you want to offer? And is it a product that interest is growing, or is it a service that's declining? People are not doing that so much anymore, don't need that so much anymore. I mean, one of the things, just think about it, the carpet cleaning service, probably 20 years ago is very different than it is now, because all the new young people are having homes with laminate floors, so no carpets to come in, and mother's wall-to-wall carpeting is being pulled up. So just silly little things like that that you need to think about. And where is my product, my service in its life cycle? Is it on the upswing or the decline? How are you going to finance this company now that you know who you're going to sell it to and you know it's a good business that's on the upswing? How are you going to finance your business to get started? There are really three pieces of information you need to think about. First of all, you think about your equity. And this is mostly what startup sole proprietors especially have. That's all your personal savings that you put into the business, as well as things that you have already bought for the business. Maybe you're going to do an embroidery business and you've bought one of those big expensive machines. Maybe you're looking to manufacture a product and you've bought some lathes and other kinds of equipment. That's equity that you're bringing to the business. You may have some money in the bank that's from family and friends. We always refer to it as the bank of dad. And that money may be loans, but maybe it's just money that's there to help you out. And if the business does well, you'll pay it back. And if not, it's frankly a gift. Debt is the second piece of information you need to think about, and that's money that's borrowed. And the first thing I will have to tell you is that many banks will not lend money to a startup business. And why? Because you have no history of how well that business is going to succeed, no history of how you're going to be able to repay that loan. When they look at you to lend you money at a bank, they're going to want to see 2 or 3 years, maybe, of financial history to minimize the risk. Now, your bank of dad is probably not going to worry quite so much about that. And you can get loans sometimes where you can minimize the initial expense by saying that you will defer payment of the loan for perhaps the first year, or maybe pay interest only until that time. There are some ways to manage financing your business. Do not count on grants. I know that this is an unusual time, and there are some grants out there that are public monies and various foundations that are trying to help existing businesses that are struggling already. There's not a whole lot of grant money out there to start a new business. The other thing you need to think about is credit. A lot of people finance their business startups on credit cards. That's what the little picture is here. And credit cards are your personal credit reputation. And if you've managed your credit cards well and you have high available credit on them, that is a way to start financing your business. Let's talk a little bit more about credit. As a startup business, your personal credit's going to count highly. It's an indicator of your character. How have you paid your loans and debts in the past? It's important to know what your credit rating is. You need to check on your credit rating by going to the link below and get a free credit report. And you also would want to know what your credit score is. A lot of people are surprised that credit's not as good as they think. And so I would suggest, if that's the case, you might want to look into how to repair that credit, how to improve it. And there are ways to learn how to do that. And go ahead and get that credit score up a little bit before you go to the bank and look for a loan. When you're talking about commercial credit, the banks are going to look at your business credit in several ways. One, they're going to look and see how much do you have invested in your business, what's your equity, your interest in the business. As the business is ongoing, they're going to want to know, what's your capacity for paying me back? That's called the cash flow. How much will you have at the end of each month to pay that loan if I give it to you? How can I, as a banker, be more comfortable about lending you the money? What property do you have that I might use as security? If you're in a building that you happen to own, maybe they can take a mortgage on your commercial building. Do you have a house that you have built up quite a bit of equity? They may take a second mortgage on your house as security. There are all kinds of conditions that can be placed on the loan to assure that you repay. They may withhold the entire amount of the loan and advance it over time if you have the kind of business that you're maybe doing some building out of a facility or some upfitting of a retail store. And how confident are they in you and the business that you're going into to think that it's going to succeed? All of you have read about certain kinds of businesses where half of the starts fail in the first 5 years. It's particularly true in the food service, restaurant business, some other businesses that are also riskier, that they just, for whatever reason, are not as successful. All of these things will play into what a banker will think about money. So if you've still decided you're going to go ahead and you either have money or you are then let's think about choosing a business structure for your business. Many of you will be sole proprietors. You are the only owner. You've invested everything that you have in the business. You have no partners, probably no employees at the start. You might want to choose to be a limited liability corporation or a limited liability partnership. The LL for limited liability means exactly that. As a sole proprietor, you and the business are indistinguishable. If the business has debt, it's your debt. If you have debt, it can affect the business. With a limited liability situation, you have reduced that risk in that if the business has debt or the business incurs some sort of liability through lawsuit or something like that, your business assets can be affected, but your personal assets would not be. You can set up a sole proprietorship by simply opening a bank account, getting a business license, and saying you are doing business as. So it's Barbara Miller doing business as Barb's Hair Salon. Or you can get a limited liability corporation by filing online at the Secretary of State, and that's a pretty easy thing to do on your own. For corporations, whether they're S Corps or C Corps, it's a good idea to have an attorney. It does require an attorney's assistance, so you need to consider that if that's the way you want to go. I would suggest in partnerships that you also have an attorney. A lot of times, if you're starting a small business and you're doing manufacturing, you may have people who partner with you, other people who are producing the product, working in the sewing room or working in the machine shop with you, and they've got a financial interest as well. What I always say about partnerships is they're a lot like marriages. They're way too easy to get into and very hard and expensive to get out of. So going to an attorney and setting up your partnership agreement is like getting a prenup. You agree that if this business doesn't work out, if this partnership just is not successful, and for whatever reasons we wish to dissolve it, then the terms for one partner buying out the other, the terms of being forced to sell the business, the terms of finding another investor to replace a partner, all need to be put down in writing and agreed upon. So be sure and despite the fact that you've known this partner for a long, long time and maybe worked together before, be sure and see an attorney before you enter into a partnership. You need to choose a business name, and that sounds like an easy thing, but it's not always. And the business is going to identify your brand. Well, what is your brand? It's more than just the Nike swoosh. It's more than just the Coke sign. Your brand is going to tell your potential customers about you. So I use an example of who are you going to be marketing to? What is going to catch your customer's eye? Suppose you're doing a landscape business And you can name your company one of two ways. You can be Smitty's Lawn Care, or you can be Smith's Landscape Services. And the name tells your clients something about you and what kind of service they might expect, whether you're going to be friendly, whether you're going to have a bunch of employees coming to do the work, whether you're going to be there yourself. Neither name is better than the other, but it tells your customer something different about you. But you also need to make sure that somebody else knows you're using the name. And so you can check that out at the Secretary of State's office. You might want to check whether there are any trademarks for this name. Any other company not using it in this state, at South Carolina Secretary of State, but anybody who might be using it elsewhere. And then think about the name. How is it going to work on the web? If you're going to have a website, and pretty much everybody does, how is that word going to work? How, you need to see if the URL that you want to use is available, or what might you have to alter in the name to find a URL that is available. And then you want to register your name with the Secretary of State. Lots more things to do to start up. You need to apply for a tax ID number. It's called an EIN. That stands for Employer Identification Number. And you think, well, I'm not having any employees. I don't need that. I'm a sole proprietor. Well, yes and no. It's a good idea to have an EIN. The bank is going to expect you to have one as a business, even if you are doing business as Smitty's Lawn Care. But the EIN is needed once you start having employees. So go ahead and get that number, start using it for all of your business activity. Open a business checking account. Do not ever mix your personal money with your business finances. I know sometimes you're out there and you need to buy something and all you have is your personal credit card. Try not to do that. Ask for a business debit card when you open that business checking account. See if they will offer that to you, and use that for your online purchases or supplies that you run out and get, office supplies and so on. Or try to get a business credit card to use instead and pay off the card each month. The advantage to that is it's going to also help establish business credit in the name of the business, not in your name. And while we're talking about credit cards, you need to decide if you're going to accept non-cash payments and figure out who's going to be the processor for that. There are other licenses and permits that you need to get. This is not an exhaustive list, but there are some things that people don't always think about. First of all, you need to make sure that the type of business you're going to operate is acceptable in the location that you've chosen. Sometimes you can't even operate a business from home because your HOA does not permit home businesses. So be sure and check those things out. If you're moving into a building for your business, make sure that you have a certificate of occupancy from your local regulators. What that means is the building is fit to occupy, the wiring is in good shape, the heating system is safe, everything is up to code. It's particularly important, I think, when you're going into retail stores that have been vacant for a while and you're starting to upfit. You may find that, particularly the utilities, the wiring and plumbing maybe, are not up to code, and you'll need to bring them up to code. City and counties will require licenses. Most every city does. Counties don't. You'll need to check with your individual county. You'll need a sales tax license if you're selling anything at retail. If you're dealing with food, you'll need food handling certifications. Those of you who are barbers and hairdressers know that you need to be licensed and regulated through LLR. There are many, many trades that require that kind of licensing. If you're a contractor, you'll probably have to have city business license in every city that you work in. And that can be very annoying. The state is working on a common portal to make that a little bit easier for you. And of course, if you're in the hospitality business, you know that you need permits for food and alcohol sales. So if you've made your way this far, let's talk about what's the game plan. If you're operating a small business, you're home-based, or maybe just strictly e-commerce, or a small retail business or service business, you can probably start up now use your own money, and scale down your formal business plan. But if you're going to be working with employees, if you're going to be manufacturing something in a fairly large facility with a substantial lease, then you need to have a much more extensive plan right now. So the game plan is the business plan. There's going to be a webinar a week from today at the same time, presented by Paul Featheringale, which will address the business plan. So I would suggest you think about attending that. But meanwhile, while you're thinking about starting your business, if you haven't got really off the ground yet, I suggest choosing a method for keeping your thoughts and ideas and questions and information together and organized. And I recommend either a digital organizer, get a 3-ring binder. I'm kind of old school. The accordion files work really well. Notes on your smartphone. But as you're researching who your competitors are, as you're researching whose websites you like the looks of, as you're researching store fixtures that you might want to buy, as you're coming across business articles that you really need to read but don't have time to do it now, just copy down the links and go back and read them later. All of these things that you stumble upon, lists of software you might want, looking at different credit card processing systems, different accounting systems, Facebook pages that you like, put all of that in a folder and keep it organized by category. Most business plans are going to have a start that's going to have an organizational chart. And guess what? As a sole proprietor, your chart is not very big. It is not a family tree. It is just one big dot on the chart, and it's you. So you're going to, most business plans will ask for your management profiles. They'll want to know what skills each of these officers brings to your business. If it's just you're going to have to make the executive decisions. You're going to have to make the operating decisions. What are those? That means how are we going to get our shipping out? How are our suppliers getting shipments in? Where are they? How come they're late? You're going to need to make financial decisions. How much money is in the bank? Who's not paid us that we were counting on paying us if we've invoiced someone? You're going to have to make all of the IT decisions. What kinds of software to use, what kind of internet provider is the best one, what kinds of technology. You're going to have to make all of the human resource decisions. Am I going to hire people? What information do I need to keep when I hire them? What if I want to fire them? What can I legally do or not do? It's a lot of things to do, and you're not going to know all of that, so you'll need to fill those talent gaps. Sometimes you can outsource some of the financial transactions, maybe somebody doing your payroll as payroll services. You can outsource some of the technology, maybe on a part-time basis to some college student who's majoring in that sort of thing. But you need to have a plan to fill those talent gaps. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is make strategic alliances. Just because you're a sole proprietor doesn't mean you have to be in this all alone. You can join forces. Join your Chamber of Commerce. They will have people who can advise you. They may have after-hours events where you can meet other business people and ask them the questions that have got you baffled. If you're working downtown, join that downtown organization. If you're in a particular trade, certainly start to follow what's going on in the trade associations. Even if you don't join just yet, see if you can subscribe to their newsletter or their magazine and keep up with what's trends in the field. I mentioned earlier about the partnerships. When should you speak to an attorney? Well, there are a number of times. A lot of things, and I put this slide up here, many things are becoming self-service now. For example, if you're dealing with some of the employee situations, the South Carolina Business One Stop is a self-service website that can get you through most things, and they offer some tutorials out there as well. But if you're unsure, it doesn't hurt to ask legal advice. It's always a good investment. For partnerships and incorporations, you'll need to do that. If you're signing contracts and leases, certainly have someone take a look at it. Many commercial leases are more than just 1 year at a time. We tend to think of leases like renting an apartment or a house, but commercial leases tend to be 3 to 5 years in length, and that's a long time to be committed to a deal that isn't really in your favor. If you're purchasing real estate, commercial business, of course, you need to have an attorney. And the other thing is, we don't always want to talk about it, but exit strategy planning. If your business is not doing well and you need to get out of business and you have some debt, or you have someone interested in buying the business, or you're just ready to retire and close down, there are lots of things that you need to undo that you did when you opened up. So those are times when it's helpful to speak with an attorney. We talked a little bit about borrowing money earlier, and I was kind of discouraging about it, and I probably will continue to be. But if you do need to borrow money, here's what you need to think about, and that would be a bank is generally going to look for as much as 25 to 40% owner equity. And they're going to look for this secondary source of repayment, either collateral or as a guarantor. Now, collateral could be equipment that you purchased during the course of doing business that they're going to take a lien on, or maybe you're borrowing money to get that equipment and they're going to take a lien on it. When you have business equipment and a lien is taken on it, that's filed at the county courthouse in the same way that mortgages on houses are. So you are not able to sell that equipment without getting the lien released. It's an important thing to know. You'll need to provide a banker with your personal financial statement and 2 or 3 years of tax returns. And let's talk about something I discovered recently in helping some other clients apply for some of the pandemic loans that have been available. More people than I thought are way behind on their tax returns. I guess I thought people file on April 15th every year, but we have come across people who have struggled to get the paperwork together, and not only did they have 2019 taxes not filed, some maybe went as far as back as still working to get 2018 together. So please, please, please make sure that your tax returns for your personal life are up to date before you go to a bank and try to get a loan. The other thing is, let me tell you about a personal financial statement. A lot of people didn't understand what that was. Personal financial statement is simply a document that shows all the assets that you own and all the debts that you owe. And you go down the asset side and value those things, the value of your home, the value of your automobiles, the value of that lot down at the lake that you haven't built on yet, and go back and calculate what you owe on the house, what you still owe on your car payment. If you own the lot outright, then that's good. There's nothing to subtract from that, but you do the arithmetic on all the things that you have as assets minus all of the liabilities against those assets, and the difference is your net worth. And they will want to see a financial statement from you. If you have partners, if you're a bigger business, they will want to see it on some of your key employees, like your chief financial officer, maybe your chief technology officer. So those things, if you're not in good shape right now, you need to take a look at those things and see if you can get them together. Now, this is pretty much just an overview of what you'll need to know about finance. And it's going to be from my perspective, having been in business myself. The business owner needs to be responsible for keeping the books and periodically reviewing the books. To keep the books, you need to use a system you feel comfortable with. For a sole proprietor, it could be simply a set of Excel spreadsheets and your business checking account. But many proprietors find that QuickBooks software is inexpensive and easily pulls everything together, not only your checkbook, but also any bills that you owe, accounts payable, any people that owe you, accounts receivable, all together in one place, so you have a better picture of what's going on. Once you have additional employees, you're going to have additional requirements financially. in particular. And one of the biggest risks for sole proprietors is that you will have a couple of employees and you will pay them, and the payroll system will deduct all of the tax liabilities that you have, the withholding for federal income tax, the withholding for state income tax, and all of the other things. And the employee will walk away with a net paycheck. You have to remit all the rest of those things periodically to the appropriate authorities. And many small businesses find themselves in trouble when they have a cash flow problem and they don't have the money in the bank to remit the withholdings. They have money in the bank to pay the employees, hopefully. There's nothing more embarrassing than having your employee go to the bank on Friday and have your check not be cashed. But at any rate, be sure that you are responsible when you get to that point, because it's a good way to get in business trouble if you aren't careful. And if you're making retail sales, you also have sales tax to remit. Be sure to do that timely. If you're doing a lot of e-commerce, you may want to use Squarespace or Lightspeed to help you manage your inventories and so on, and also serve as your point of sale terminal. Otherwise, you can use, an adding machine with an adding machine tape. Still works, but it's not the easiest way, certainly not the easiest way to pull all your data together. The last thing is you do want a CPA to do your annual taxes at the end of the year. But they are not your chief financial officer. They are your tax preparer. You can ask them questions about how to manage certain expenses relative to positioning you in a favorable tax situation. But they're not going to be watching month to month whether your sales are cyclical, whether you have good months in the spring and bad months in the fall, whether your peak season is June because you're a florist with all those weddings, or whether your peak season is in the fall because you're in the fried chicken business and tailgates just run your income up high. So you need to go back to line one and say you are responsible for keeping and reviewing those books, understanding your financial cash flow patterns, where you can make changes to even that out, and understand what's happening. So if I have not preached too much and bored you to death with some of the little anecdotes, then I'm happy to entertain questions. Carolyn, I think you've got a bunch of them maybe in the chat room.
Robert and I have been doing a wonderful job, and I want to say thank you to Robert, trying to answer a lot of the questions while the event was going on.
Oh, thank you.
So let's see, and Paul has been chiming in as well. So let's see what we have. So I responded privately to Allison, I believe it's Krupke, and I'm going to provide you with Pat Cameron's contact information. She's in our Hilton head office, so she'll be able to speak to you directly about the business that you're interested in on Defusky. Let's see, I believe Paul answered a question for Jim in regards to business to business transactions. Let's see. Robert also answered some questions about business licensure and things. So I think that the things that we had out there have pretty much been answered. There was also a question about a list of banks that don't have maintenance fees for business accounts. We don't have a list of banks that references their fees or charges. That information changes so very quickly. And I believe my response to that was to contact a local bank versus one of the big banks, because many times with a local bank, you might have the opportunity to negotiate terms on a business account.
I would think that's true, and I would, as you suggested with the question earlier, referring them to Pat, get acquainted with the SBDC consultant in your area, and they may have a reference guide that would be various institutions that they would recommend and refer you to. And they might know exactly what you're interested in relative to the community banks. I encourage folks in many cases to deal with their community bank, because those employees and bank managers and customer service individuals tend to stay around a little longer than some of the ones at the larger banks. And you can build a working relationship over the years with those people and be very helpful with some of your financial questions.
And Chip, thank you for that information about Aiken. But we kind of have to be very careful in our presentations that we, the SBDC, are not giving suggestions or advertising for one bank over another. And of course, everyone that is on the call may not be in the Aiken area. But again, Chip, thank you for that information that you provided in the chat box. Here's a question. Is there a rule to know what the appropriate rent is for a retail space? There is not, that I'm aware of.
No, there is no rule. I would think that generally there are prevailing rates that are probably different in small towns than they are in more metropolitan areas, Greenville, Charleston, Columbia. And they're usually based on square footage per year. It's a funny formula. You might try to Google or research that. You might check with a county chamber. They may have some information on that. But no, there's no handy place that you can go to find out how much you should pay. And office space can come in different classifications depending on whether it's a prime location or not so much, whether it's a strip mall or historic building. It's not an easy number to find.
Here's another question, and this is from Allison Krupke, who we were talking about DeFusky. Are there any books you can recommend for purchasing an existing business? Allison, that's one of those things, by the time it goes to print, it's pretty much outdated. And in our office, we're in the Charleston office, Barbara is in Newberry. When someone is looking at purchasing an existing business, one of the first questions I've heard is, have you received a business valuation on the business? So getting a true third-party business valuation done so you truly know what you're getting into and what the value of the business is, having access to their books, all of those things are key. Many people use a broker when purchasing a business. I mean, that would be completely up to you. But again, Pat Cameron in Hilton Head she is a firecracker. She is awesome. So she would be very, very helpful for you in regards to a business down in that area.
And business valuation is a very complicated skill. And there are businesses who specialize in that. Some of them are national businesses, but many of them are more regional. And I personally have had through this office a couple of clients who did engage an individual to value a business. It's fairly recently, so I haven't heard back how that's gone yet. But yes, if it's a significant business and there's a lot of risk involved, clearly don't just take their word for it.
And Barbara, there are also people become certified and licensed to be a business evaluator, do they not?
Yes, they do. They do. And it's quite a skill because it takes into a lot of things. It looks at the numbers. As you say, you get an opportunity to see the book. So it looks at the numbers, but it also looks at that intangible goodwill. What's the reputation of the company? It also looks at where it is in the life cycle. A business that may look like it's really great, and the books, the numbers, and the financials for the past 5 or 10 years look wonderful, but it's, you know, a buggy whip manufacturer, so they're headed downhill. So despite the fact that it looks to have a certain value right now, that value is declining every day. So if it's significant, I would encourage finding a certified valuator and getting an opinion.
So here is a question, and Barbara or Robert or even Paul can comment on this. Thank you, James, for this question. Can you elaborate on why Squarespace or Lightspeed are chosen for e-commerce?
I would only say that those are the two that are most commonly used among my retail clients. And I wasn't familiar with Lightspeed until 8 months or so ago, when during the pandemic, one of my retail clients wanted to do a lot more e-commerce than what they were doing and decided to convert to Lightspeed because of how it managed the internet piece of your inventory. And it was supposed to be a 1-month conversion. It did take longer than that for them to get through the conversion process, but I believe they're pretty happy with the outcome. The biggest problem when you've got to do both retail in store and e-commerce with the same inventory is just keeping track of what you've sold online that you can't be selling to the people in the store at the same time. And it gets a little tricky for relatively small businesses. So I think those systems have been a little more focused on managing the timing. And once something is claimed on a internet sale, it's taken out of inventory and no longer available. And you've seen that if you've been buying things themselves. You know, you log online and you go, whoops, no, this is no longer in stock. Well, that's because somebody else has already bought it online.
So Robert, thank you for answering Rochelle McDowell's question. She asked, would you need a sales license in South Carolina if you're strictly reselling online? And of course, the answer to that is yes, and a retail license from the South Carolina Department of Revenue. So I don't see any.
Self-serve too, so you can go to DOR and get that license.
So I'm not seeing any other. Okay, could you please clarify if a sales license is required for consulting services? You mean a business license, Alex? So business licenses are specific to your county and city, and any type of business, particularly if you have an office and things of that nature, require a business license. Does anyone else want to add to that?
I think that's pretty much true. As a general rule, when you are selling things, selling products, you need a sales tax license. When you are selling services, generally speaking, that is not true. However, in South Carolina, some services are subject to the sales tax, and you just need to do the research and see if your particular service is. In the case of consulting, I don't believe that it is. But
and Alex, I see that you're referencing that you're located in the Greenville County office. None of the presenters or consultants on the call today are from that area. So I would strongly suggest that you reach out to the Greenville SBDC office and develop a relationship with the SBD consultant there, and they can answer all of the specific questions for your area.
And what we have found is sales tax is a statewide thing. Business taxes are governed at the municipality and county level. Counties very often do not require a business license. um, cities and other towns very often do. So it's very, very location specific.
So are there any other questions today?
And Barbara, could you unshare your screen?
I will be glad to.
So I have one last question. I'll probably need a large space for my business, about 10,000 square feet. So how do I get a license for that business without having this physical space rented? I don't want to lease a space and then be paying for the space without a license, or be waiting for all the licensing and approvals to come while paying for an empty space. I guess I'm having trouble understanding the logical sequence of what things need to be done. Paul's going to answer that one for us.
Okay.
So essentially, you can get a business license at any time. It's not really tied to the space per se. I mean, typically what most people do is, once they get their space squared away and everything, they get a business license, unless they are going to be doing any, if you're going to work out of your home for a while before you get a space or anything like that, you're still going to need a license for that. But those two things can kind of happen independently of each other. You can get a license at any time, and it will typically last for a year, and then you'll have to renew it. But that is separate from your permitting and all of that for your space. So I don't know if that helps, but.
So here's another question from Don Perkins, and thank you, Don, for your question. The Secretary of State site indicates that the business needs to be in place before you can register the name. Is that true, similar to my question? Well, I know the Secretary of State, and once again, anyone jump in, is where you would register your business and obtain your LLC or whatever that may be. There are plenty of people that register their business and then they don't really do anything with it. So you don't have to physically be in business to register your business. Any insight on that, Paul, Robert, or Barbara?
No, I think there are lots of people who go ahead and register their business, whether they register as an LLC or what, and then for whatever reason, they never really open for business. The business is in existence, and it's located at your house, I guess, and whatever address you've submitted to the Secretary of State. But it is considered an active business until you report back to them that you are no longer in business, or until at some, I forget what the number of years is, but when you go to the Secretary of State and inquire about whether your business name is available, you will sometimes see that that business name was used and has subsequently been forfeited or expired. So at some point, it will vanish if you don't keep it active.
So Vivian asked again, in conjunction with having the sequence of events, she's asking, even if the business requires inspections from the fire department. So, I mean, renting a space, upfitting a space, and getting inspections somewhat come after getting your business license. Would that be correct, Paul?
Well, I mean, they're separate processes. So, I mean, you could get a business license after you do all that. Typically, people get it beforehand. Go ahead and register your name and register your business with the Secretary of State, get your business license in your community, and then you can do all those other things because that comes separate. And plus, you never know how long that's going to take, to find a space and get through all that process. And by the time you finally do, a lot of times you're ready to go and ready to start. And so you want to go ahead and have your business license in place.
And you need to think about a couple of things. registering your name with the Secretary of State is one thing. It's a one-time expense. You then are who you are, the name of your business. Business licenses at the county and city level are something else. They're essentially a permit to do business in the city for 1 year, and generally their cost is based on some factor of your sales or some other measurement. And so you pay a fee each year to renew that business license. And so if you got a city business license and had 0 sales the first year, you would renew it the second year at whatever their minimum charge is for startup businesses. But if you were in business and had generated a significant amount of revenue, your business license the next year is going to go up. So they're two different things. Registering your name with the Secretary of State establishes you as a business in the state as an entity, but a business license at the city or county is your permit to actually do that business. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very good explanation. And then your you know, as kind of the third level from some of what we've seen in the questions and excuse me, in the chat box is your permits and approvals and licensing related to your space. That again is a third level that's separate from your registration with the state and then from your business license in your community.
But chances are the community will want you to have your business license at the city before they send the city fire department out to inspect you. Maybe not, but it, you know, depending on your city or your county, all of those inspections are at the city or county level. And, you know,
And again, I would consider everyone that has specific questions about a community in the state of South Carolina, that they reach out to their local SBDC office, develop a relationship with a business consultant, and begin your work on your business development. And the consultants do a wonderful job of being there for you, not only in the beginning of your business, but we would like to develop a long-term relationship so we can, you know, celebrate in your successes and help you with your challenges. So, you know, there is no loss to you by reaching out to us. We don't charge at all for our consulting services. And in my opinion, you have everything to gain from taking advantage of our services.
I would encourage that myself because many of my clients are not startups. They are clients who wish to expand and need financing. They want to add a new manufacturing line and need to buy some equipment. They need to move from a small space to a big space. So we work with them throughout the whole life of their business.
So, Barbara, thank you. We appreciate the information and presentation. And to each of our participants, we thank you and ask that you fill out the post-event survey. The survey provides us with information to plan future webinars. If you complete and return the survey, you will receive the slides from the presentation.
And Barbara, I just want to share with you some of the wonderful comments we're getting. Wow, thank you, great information. Thank you all for your time and resources. Thank you, awesome presentation. So,
Well,
Barbara, you did an awesome job. Thank you so very much.
Perhaps it's because I ran my own business for 16 years and it was one of the most fun things I ever did.
Well, it definitely shows. So once again, you'll be receiving an email very shortly, probably within the next 15 to 20 minutes, maybe as much as 30, asking you to respond to the post-event survey. And as Robert said, once you respond to that survey, we'll be sending out the presentation slides for you to have in your library. And we generally will give everyone a few days to respond, and we'll send out one batch to everyone that responds. So it is our plan to get the presentation slides out to those participants by Monday afternoon. So thank you very much for attending, and that is the conclusion of this training event.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Hey, Barbara, what business were you in?
I ran a bed and breakfast. My late husband and I moved to Newberry to live in a big old house, and the realtor who showed it to us, this was in 1992, said that the Opera House was going to be restored and Newberry would be a great place for a bed and breakfast. And as I tell my friends, this was in the days before Google. So we went to the library and got out some books on how to run a bed and breakfast. And we looked at each other and said, oh, we could do that. And so we did.
Great, thanks for sharing.
Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.